Ross Gibson is presenting on Lego as serious play and Lego as a methodological tool, which is really interesting. We had some sessions before on creative methodologies. I want to see what Lego can do for us in terms of a potential technique to use with young people, and is focusing on young people who are accommodated in secure care. So you ready, Ross, to take over?
Okay, so thank you, Daniela, and thank you, Amy, for your presentation before me. I think I'm really glad to have followed you, because there's a little wee snippets in there which I think interact with what I'm going to be talking about today. So to give you a bit of background about who I am and what I'm trying to do today, I'm currently undertaking a part-time PhD here at the university. But my real job is I work at the Children and Young People's Centre for Justice. And this is kind of ties into both roles. I want to do what I'll be doing eventually, hopefully, a thesis on the life experiences of children who are in secure care, and looking at their perception of the pathways that they have taken to reach that point. And I'm currently supervised, or I am supervised by Professor Laura Piacentini and Dr. Laura Steckley, who have been great. So today I'm going to talk about my use of Lego Serious Play as a methodological tool, and I want to highlight that I've got some help from my niece Millie later on. Okay, so just to remind you that I am a part-time PhD student. I'm in my first year of part-time, so I'm not yet at the stage where I can report findings or any of the novel revelations that other people will be during this seminar series. However, what I'm hoping to do is just to give you some ideas of where I am just now and what I think might be the findings or the benefit of using Lego Serious Play. So first of all, to remind you a little bit about the PhD, it's about children who are in secure care, and that in itself is a strange space, multi-dimensional, multifaceted, depending on what lens you look at it through. It's a place where children receive their education, but you wouldn't necessarily call it a school. There are children there who have mental illness, but you wouldn't necessarily call it a hospital. There are children there who have been engaged in a variety of different risky behaviours and violent behaviours and offending behaviours, but it isn't necessarily there, it shouldn't be there to serve as an alternative to prison or somewhere that punishes children for the behaviour. So in itself, secure care is perhaps means very different things to different people. To give you a bit of background about the children who reside within secure care, they're placed there either by court or by the children's hearing system. And recently, over the last 10 years or so, we've seen a larger number of children from out with Scotland being placed within Scottish secure care. What I know about the children there is based on 2 censuses of the population that undertook, is that this is a population who've encountered a wide range of variety of traumatic experiences. They have both been at risk and pose a risk to others. They've encountered a huge number of adverse childhood experiences, and far more often than the general population. And importantly, and I want to stress that we think around about 60% of the children within secure care have a speech, language and communication need. Through the PhD, I want to query the existing literature and ask the children to give me their insight and their perspective as to whether or not the stories that have been told about them by adults within textbooks actually ring true, and can they tell me a different story about what it is that actually happened that led to them being in the locked environment that is secure care. Excuse me. Now, there's a number of practical and ethical issues. I would have loved to have done an ethnographic study of secure care, to sit in that environment for months at a time and soak up as much of the learning as I possibly could. But being a part-time student made that impossible. The relationships that I can build on a weekly basis is not as in-depth as I could possibly have done through an ethnographic study. So I wanted to create a way that I could get underneath the skin of the child's views and a little bit quicker, bearing in mind that I'm going to be asking them about situations that are probably the worst things that's ever happened to them, horrific experiences, and they themselves are in a very precarious situation, that they don't know when they're leaving that placement, they don't know where they're going to, they don't know what the future holds. So I wanted to think about how could I speak to the children in a child-friendly way that addresses the inequity of me being a relatively young adult and then being a relatively old child, probably around the age of 15 to 18, and addresses and bears in mind their circumstances, but also the speech, language and communication need difficulties, which may otherwise pose a barrier to carrying out traditional qualitative interviews. So thanks to a former student of mine when I was a practice teacher, he introduced me to Lego Serious Play. And really, not only does it give me an excuse to play with Lego, but it provides me with an opportunity to carry out research, a methodological basis that elicits the information from the child that I'm seeking to reveal. So first of all, I'll give you a little bit of background about Lego Serious Play. As the name suggests, it was created by the Lego organisation around about the turn of the century. The chief executive of the Lego organisation was Kjell Christensen. He felt that the organisation was stagnating. Their plans to going forward weren't dynamic. He felt he had expertise and knowledge within his staff group, but the traditional way of designing strategy and boardroom meetings wasn't conducive to sharing that knowledge in a democratic way. So the Lego organisation sought the help of two researchers, Bart Victor and Johan Roos, and between the two of them, they created a Lego Serious Play methodological approach, which is usually used in education or in business. So I'm adapting it slightly here, but they take a group learning environment, people around the table, literally using their hands, pieces of Legos to construct the answer to whatever challenge has been posed to them. Now, Lego have, since that time, used open source to release their data. It is now freely available to anybody to use online, and there's a number of different accredited training courses that you can take to become an accredited Lego Serious Play facilitator. And in terms of Lego, their finances has increased. They have, I know that looks like a magician, but it's supposed to look like a man in a top hat to symbolise the fortunes of Lego turning around since they adopted this approach. So to tell you a bit more about the approach, remember this is usually used in the group circumstances. I'm going to adapt it to use just on a one-to-one basis, and it has been used previously that way, but it's not commonplace. So the 4 stages of Lego Serious Play are as follows. First of all, you pose the question or the quest. What is it you want to know? So I will be asking, tell me about the year in your life prior to you coming into secure care. The second part of that is to construct an answer. So physically using the Lego bricks, construct something that responds to that challenge that I've just set the child. And in doing so, that taps into Papin's idea of constructionism and Piaget's constructivism, both of which are the underlying theories behind Lego Serious Play. The third part of it is to share your ideas, to share what I have built and hear what somebody else has built and bounce the ideas off one another. And the fourth part of it is to reflect on the answer that you've just given. So bearing that in mind, if you have any Lego in front of you, here's some I made earlier. If you have just 5 pieces of Lego, what I want you to do is with those 5 pieces of Lego, I want you to build something which represents hope to you. I should have a countdown timer here, but I'm only going to give you 45 seconds because of time restrictions. But if you just build something that you think represents or symbolises or as a metaphor for hope, now I'm not going to ask anybody to show what their construction is, but if you want to flash it in the camera on you go. In the process, thank you, Daniela. I can see you. In fact, Daniela, you're not shy. You can take yourself off mute and tell me why that represents hope.
Whatever I could grab really quickly, but
okay.
Yeah, just walking yesterday is full of snowdrops. So this is an illustration not of a snowdrop, but of a plant. So
perfect.
As in regeneration, spring and future.
That's brilliant, Danielle. Gold star. Thank you. Is anybody else brave and want to show us your construction?
I made a smile. I think it's a smile anyway.
Perfect. Penny, talk us through your smile.
Well, you know, it's happy, hopeful. Smiles are good.
That's great. Thank you so much on what you just did there.
Fun.
Yeah, what you did was create something that doesn't it's not necessarily a literal representation of hope. It's more a metaphorical or a symbolic representative of hope. And that process that you just went through there, and which you've all picked up really quickly by the sounds of, or the looks of it, is exactly what I'm looking to do when I'm meeting with the young people. And the very same artifact that people build will mean a variety of different things. So if Daniela had shown, if you can hold your construct up again, Daniela. So it looks to me like two tall white blocks with a flower on top of it. To Daniela, that means hope. To somebody else, that could mean their home because they live in a block of flats. To somebody else, that could represent their hobbies because they're into gardening. The point I want to make is that the artifact that somebody builds has a unique meaning to that child in this sense. And that again ties into one of the underlying principles of Lego Serious Play, which is the artifact that the child makes. We must, as researchers or facilitators of the group, we do not question the builder, but rather we take the builder's story of the artifact, and whatever they build, that is a representation of their truth. So it's a very it's a subjective truth that we're getting, a representation of their life. So just to tell you why I think that fits into my methodology, I'll be setting out questions to young people. They will be building constructions or artifacts, which will lead to discussion. Again, during the course of that discussion, more information will come out. We'll have reflections on what they've built. And in doing so, exactly as Daniela and Penny has shown, they have created a metaphor which represents what it is, that the challenge that they were set. I will then analyse that using metaphor analysis, and that itself will reveal deeper meanings, which will generate new knowledge. So I just want to talk a little bit about metaphors and how that fits into what I'll be doing. And whilst I'm talking about secure care studies here, I also think it is an excellent way that people in a wide variety of settings will be able to use Lego Serious Play as a methodological tool, as a social worker, as a residential worker, or carrying out research. So what we know about metaphors is that they're roughly used once every 25 words, up to a rate of 6 per minute. Metaphors are extremely common throughout the language, particularly in the English language, and some of the most famous quotes from Martin Luther King is about a mountain of despair and a stone of hope. And we also come to this hallowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. So what I would do through a metaphor there would be highlighting the mountain of despair. There's what's called an entailment behind that. Is the underlying message behind mountain and behind stone. And that would lead to me pursuing that line of discussion during an interview. And similarly, it's been used in literature. One of the world's most famous metaphors is all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. And the entailment there being that we are all actors. We're only playing a small part in the overall life of the world that we live in. And as I wanted to test whether or not children who are in a locked environment also use metaphors. I was fortunate enough to straight away, out of 2 reports that I looked at, I was able to find them. So we had Alison Goff's report, which is about looking at children's views of being placed in secure care, and they talked about being locked up, which is a metaphor. They also talked about having lost it and were off their head before they came in here. And the English Children's Commissioner, she's outgoing Children's Commissioner, just a few weeks ago published a report about a young person who was in YOI in England. So it's a comparable situation to children's secure care. They talked about either having been in a locked environment, you come out as a shell of a person, and when in that environment, if you don't do the fighting, you're made to eat shit and drink piss. That's not. I'm 99% certain it's not a literal a statement they're making there. It's another example of the way you're treated if you don't. So the entailment there is about negative things happening to you if you don't adhere to the culture within the locked environment. So these are older children that I've cited here. Also wanted to try this out in real life, and in the COVID world, I managed to do it online with my niece, who's thankfully provided a few examples. So this is Millie, who is 10 years old. Although going on 45, some of the things she comes out with, she's by far the most intelligent person in my family, although she has good genes, obviously. But we started off with something that she's scared of, and she built a spider here, with you can see that at the front, that's the two antennae. Don't know if spiders have antennae, but the thing at the front of the head, and the yellow and the red brick being things that go out the side. Now that's not a metaphor necessarily. That is a menonym. It's something that's built to represent the thing. This is meant to represent a spider. This is one of the first exercises I did with her. So the reason I'm showing this one is because I can show the progress as we go through. You very quickly pick up the process of the skills needed to use Lego Serious Play. When I asked her what's the best thing in the world, she is the long yellow brick in the middle there. The two red bricks underneath her are her mum and dad. The three bricks on top of that is her grandparents. And it's at this point she realised she'd left me out and she stuck another brick in, I should say. But anyway, in her mind, a metaphorical representation of the best thing in the world is to be surrounded by her family. Next, and I apologise, it's a little bit blurry, but the next is I was moving into more abstract concepts. And remember, this is a 10-year-old child. What is justice? And what Millie built was the red bricks being people who have lots of things, the blue brick being people who don't have lots of things, and the little slidey brick is a hand stretching out, because a world that is just will be where people have lots of things will help people that don't have many. I'm sure there's a manifesto like that a few years ago. Anyway, and the next one was to build Scotland. And this is where Millie was really skilled. She built a house with her mum and dad inside it. It's surrounded by a structure with a roof on top of it, because Scotland is her home. So she was able to demonstrate the metaphorical representation of Scotland by being her home, by building a house. So as Laura and Laura keep saying to me during supervision, so what? What does this mean? So what I think I'm able to say, based on the very early stages of thinking about Lego Serious Play within as a methodological tool, is I think it is a novel participatory methodology which addresses some of the inequities that are usually in place when an adult interviews a child. So it addresses those power dynamics, and it's a bit more interested than doing a census or a questionnaire or sitting down in a focus group. I think that it provides an opportunity to look behind the words, because what we say isn't necessarily what we mean. And by you searching for these entailments that are weaved through the metaphors, I think it can give us a bigger picture and a deeper picture. And it allows for relativity and subjectivity of experiences. The children that I'm going to be speaking to, what they tell me is their truth, so is the truth. It's not really for me, through my eyes, to tell them what their life has been like and what it's going to be like, and perhaps what would help. And I think this ultimately contributes to the knowledge in this area, not just of secure care, but as terms of a methodological tool. So thanks very much for listening to me, and I'll stop sharing now.
Excellent. Thank you very much again, Ross. That was fascinating.